Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 8:30. I just want to make a mention here. If you want to speak on a specific agenda item, we ask that you fill out an appearance slip or even for a public comment. So if you want to do that, please hand one up here to Jay and I so we can have for record for them. All right, I call this Sawyer County Zoning Committee meeting to order. Can we do roll call, Kathy, please?
Ron Buckholz.
Here.
Tweed Schuman. Kay Wilson. John Saralski. Marshall Savitsky. Steve Kirianen.
Okay, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, number C, statement of committee hearings, procedures, and statement of hearing notice. The full statement of committee and hearing procedure document, including directions for individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing to be conducted at this zoning committee meeting, are available in the back of this room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of committee and hearing procedure document is hereby incorporated into the record for the committee meeting. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 85 of the Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette as posted. Okay, number D, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the May 17th zoning committee meeting. Mr. Saralski.
I'd like to make that motion to approve.
Okay.
And I'll second.
Here we have a second by Mr. Savitsky to approve the May 17th, 2024 minutes. All right, number E, public comment. Please note that comment time is intended for the general public, not comments relating to the specific applications before this committee. Each agenda item requiring the public hearing will have this public hearing conducted just prior to the application being considered by this committee. If you wish to speak on a specific agenda item, we encourage you to hold your comments until then.
One thing real quick, we had a motion and a second there for the approval of the minutes. I don't think we had a vote for it though.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
We should also let the record reflect, is Mr. Tweed Schuman online now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Tweed would be as a acting member, as of this point, acknowledging that he is here virtually, which would make Marshall Savitsky the alternate.
This the alternate.
Yep. We also have legal counsel, as well online, Rebecca Roker. Public comments, is anyone online wishing to give public comment? You'll need to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Seeing no hands raised.
Linda? 3 minutes.
Good morning, Linda Zilmer, resident of the village of Birchwood, but fourth generation property owner in Edgewater in Sawyer County. And want to preface for some of the new members that I am not an attorney. I've never said that I was an attorney, but I often cite state statutes or the county ordinances or your rules and bylaws in support of the comments that I make, but that's not a legal opinion. I have a couple of items this morning. First of all, I hope you've all received information about the upcoming UW Stevens Point Center for Land Use Education training. There are 3 sessions next week. And if you haven't had the opportunity to study on your own some of the basics of what they call a planning commission or planning committee, those duties are very similar to the zoning committee. But to get up to speed on what's a permitted use and what is a conditional use, Was very glad to see that last night the county board is referring back to the zoning committee, a rather unusual situation. But just to use the town of Hayward rezone for the hospital as an example, right now I believe the hospital is a non-conforming use in an Ag 1 zone district because it probably never got a conditional use permit. It's been there for so long. So the committee was going to have to discuss some options. One might be a conditional use in its existing Ag 1, which is a conditional use listed there, and then possibly pursue sign variances for the number and size of signs. Or it might consider a rezone to C1, and then also that would require a conditional use permit. Hospitals have their own definition in the zoning ordinance, and they're allowed in R1 and C1. So that's just an example of understanding the basics. So when you get into more complicated things. Also, I want to make mention of the fact that if you have not looked at Muni Code where all the ordinances are, please get familiar with that. Also, to help the process to prevent things like what happened with this particular rezone, it would be helpful if the application materials were posted on the county website at the time of first publication. So right now, what's happening is that the county materials are not posted on the website until after town plan commissions and town boards have held their meetings, where I think if that was all available up front, the towns are better prepared to make a decision based on their public input, and it would help your process as well. And I think I'll just leave it at that. So thank you, and I will leave this here.
And you're gonna use that again, right?
No, I just.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll move on to our rezone application. This is a public hearing, the town of Ojibwa, rezone number 24-008. Owner Rodney and Cheryl Pearson. It is the east one half of the northwest one quarter of the northwest one quarter, section 10, township 38, north range 6 west. Tax ID 20736, 20 total acres, zoned industrial 1 and residential 1. Purpose of the request is to rezone the entire industrial 1 portion of this parcel to residential 1, to be able then to subdivide the property and build additional family dwellings. The approximate area subject to the rezone request would be 18 acres. As part of my staff report, again, it is a request to rezone approximately 18 acres from industrial 1 to residential 1. The proposed rezone would result in conforming zone district dimensional requirements. With an approved rezone, a new certified survey map would be recorded, which would divide the property into different lot configurations. At this point, no additional lot split proposals have been received. If the lot split is to be more than 4 parcels, it would require a county subdivision plat. This property is located off of Kepler Road, which is about a quarter-mile east of Highway 27 in what I'll call downtown Ojibwa. The nearest R1 property is immediately adjacent to the north. It is unclear why this area was ever zoned industrial to begin with. Records were unable to determine this, but one can assume that the town of Ojibwa wanted to keep some industrial area near the 2770 corridor. The existing 2 acres of residential 1 associated with this property was rezoned from I1 to R1 in 1981. The current surrounding use is residential and light commercial. Town of Ojibwa comprehensive plan, future land use maps are actually pretty difficult to read. It appears that the town has identified this area as future residential areas, but the mapping here is inconclusive. The town of Ojibwa and the town board decision should be considered when Sawyer County Zoning Committee makes their recommendation. As by action of the town board, motion was to approve Randy Niederkorn chair, or at least acting chair. He might have got voted in as chair. Robert Granica supervisor, Greg Habernan supervisor. No additional comments. Signed, Jill Pettit, town clerk. There were 7 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent property owners. None were returned or received with additional comments. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Jay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on rezone number 24-004.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Miss Wilson.
Second.
Marshall, you can't do that now. Sorry. You're an alternate now. Tweed seconded it, so thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to go on to public hearing in rezone number 24-008. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Is Rod or Cheryl here? Okay. Wonder why they're not.
Couldn't speak on that. I know they were at the town meeting, and the town did approve it. As I referenced in my staff report, this is what I have for the future land use map for the town of Ojibwa.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm somewhere in this area, which looks like an orangish, reddish color. So it definitely aligns with some type of the residential future land use area, but I can't tell if it's the RR2 or, the shading of this map is not great. So that's why I said it's kind of inconclusive. It's definitely not identified for future land use commercial. It's definitely not identified for future land use of industrial. It does look like they've indicated for future residential. I just don't know which residential, R1, RR1, or RR2. Like I said, looking at the maps here, let me turn elevations off. So the red crossed hatch is R1. The gray diagonal lines is the industrial one. So they're requesting to rezone that industrial one of this parcel to R1. So R1 was the most appropriate choice in that, they're already 2-acre parcel on that lot is R1 and the land immediately to the north is R1.
Okay. All right. Does anybody out there want to speak in favor of this rezone? Does anyone out there want to speak in disapproval of this rezone? Okay, if not, need a motion to come out of public hearing on rezone number 24-008. Steve,
I'll make that motion.
John.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Steve and a second by John to come out of the public hearing on rezone number 24-008. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action for the rezone town of Ojibwa number 24-008, Rodney and Cheryl Pearson. Legal description is previously read into record. The request is to rezone approximately 18 acres of industrial 1 to residential 1.
Okay, committee.
I'll make the motion to approve that rezone with findings of fact 1 through 5 and number 13.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson, a second by Steve to approve the rezone number 24-008. Any more discussion? Not, do a roll call, Kathy?
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
John Saralski.
Yes.
Kay Wilson. Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
Steve Carriennen.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving right along, this is a public hearing in the town of Radisson, conditional use permit number 24-011, owner Grant and Mindy Picard. It is the part of the southeast 1 quarter of the northeast 1 quarter, parcel number 022-739-361402, tax ID 23423. 20 total acres, zone forestry 1. Permit is desired for the construction of a single accessory building on vacant land, subject to Sawyer County zoning ordinance section 4.26 with automatic conditions. As part of my staff report, again, the permit is desired for the placement of an accessory structure. The accessory structure in this case is in the form of an 8-foot by 40-foot shipping container, which also requires a separate town approval. This again is per the Sawyer County zoning ordinance as well as the Sawyer County Code of Ordinances, Appendix D, Section 2.6, Parent 1 with automatic conditions. Those conditions would be that the construction of the accessory structure, the placement on a vacant lot may only be allowed by conditional use with town and zoning committee approval. Granting of the conditional use will require that within 3 years that a principal dwelling land use permit is applied for and that principal dwelling is built within that permit timeframe on that same parcel. Failure to build the permanent dwelling or the primary dwelling will result in citations in order for removals of the accessory structure. This is for the after the fact conditional use permit approval. The shipping container is already on the property, and if approved, the applicant will need to pay a double permit fee on the land use permit. In conversations with the applicant, they were told by the town that the shipping container was allowed, but county ordinances would require conditional use permit approvals and permits. Also in conversations with the applicant, they do plan on building a smaller cabin on the property within the next few years and would still like to have the accessory structure in the form of the shipping container to keep some of their belongings and tools on the property during the cabin building process. The proposed structure is to meet all other Sawyer County zoning setbacks and requirements. The size of the shipping container is to be 8 by 40 and approximately 8 feet in height. As action by the town board, motion was approved. Phil Quaid, Chair, Robert Villiard, Supervisor, Ron Kinsley, Supervisor. No additional comments. Signed Patty Simonson, Town Clerk. There were 4 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent property owners. None were returned or received with additional comments, as well as to my staff report. Please look at the possible conditions that we have listed there. Some of these are automatic conditions as part of this request for a conditional use permit. But when we go back into discussion action, I'll reread those conditions into the record. That is all.
Okay, thanks, Jay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on CUP number 24-011.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson. Do I have a second? We have a second by Mr. Sorolski. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We are now in public hearing on CUP number 24-011. Are Grant or Mindy here? Would you want to step forward and talk to the committee, sir? What do you want to tell
Please
us?
state your name for the record too.
Yes,
please.
sorry.
Grant Robert Pickard is my name. Basically, I need the storage building to store tools and equipment on my property to keep working it and getting ready to build. We probably would have already built there. However, we're deciding on whether this could be a future home or whether it's gonna be a cabin, so we don't know how big to build. So instead, we purchased a brand new fifth wheel, like 2022, just to buy time. We need a building to store tools and equipment on that property. I was informed by the township and others that we didn't need permits for shipping containers, or we would need one if we moved in a storage, any storage building or permanent garage. But I knew I couldn't build a building number B or building B until I had building A on site. We knew that. So we did move in the container. It is painted, olive drab. It blends right into the trees. I got pictures of it. You can't even see it at this point. So we just request to have that on site until we can actually get stuff built.
Okay, and you're okay with all the conditions that might be put on that?
Yeah, we're gonna build in 5 years, within 5 years. So we're well within that mark.
Okay. All right.
It'd be a 3-year time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my only question on that is that 3 years, does that start today or does that start back in February?
So it would start today, and it would be a 3-year time frame in which you need to secure a land use permit to build the house. And then you have another 18 months to have the house shelled and enclosed. So technically from today, if approved, if you play the time frame right, it would be 4.5 years.
We're looking
for
like
build.
about 2 is what we're
Okay.
looking at. So that's not a factor. I just want to make sure we had our date right.
Okay. Committee, anything you want to ask the applicant? Okay, all right, thank you, sir. All right, does anyone out there want to speak in favor of this CUP? Does anyone want to speak out there to disapproval of this CUP? All right, if no hands or anything? Okay, all right. I need a motion to come out of public hearing on CUP number 24-011. Mr.
I'll make
Sorrell.
that motion, Chairman.
Okay, you want to second it, John?
I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman and a second by Mr. Sorowski to come out of public hearing on CUP number 24-001. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action for the town of Radisson conditional use permit number 24-011, owner Granton Mindy Picard. Legal description is previously read into record. Request is for the desire to place or construct, in this case, an 8x40 shipping container on vacant land, subject to automatic conditions per Sawyer County zoning ordinance section 4.26, parent 1. Those conditions, as listed in my staff report, would include that a land use permit is required with a double permit fee for the accessory structure within 1 year of the date of the zoning committee's decision, that a land use permit is required and applied for the principal structure within 3 years from the date of the zoning committee's decision and built within those permit timeframes, which would be that additional 18 months with extensions. Failure to apply for or build would result in a citation with the order for removals of the accessory structure, that the accessory structure meet all other Sawyer County zoning ordinance requirements and compliant with all other state federal laws, including town approval of the accessory structure being in the form of a shipping container, and that again, the size of the shipping container not to exceed 8x40. That's all.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Jay. Committee, turn it over to you. Anybody wanna?
I'll make a motion to approve the CUP 24-011 with conditions 1 through 4 and findings of fact 1 through 3.
Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Wilson and second by Mr. Saralski.
I'd like to second that, yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call, Kathy, please.
John Saralski.
Yes.
Kay Wilson.
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Steve Carrianen.
Yes.
Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. Wonderful. Moving on, this is a preliminary plat review. This is a public hearing for Pine Cone Pond LLC. This is a preliminary county subdivision plat for a 15-lot proposal located in the town of Lenroot, owner John Bulmers. This requires zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection. As per my staff report, a few years ago, the same property had requested a new campground or a campground expansion for the KOA in this location. That conditional use permit was denied and the property was then sold to the current owner. The current owner is now proposing a 15-lot subdivision. The existing house that was on the property has recently been removed by the owner, and they have started development on other lots off of Hageberg Road, which are separate CSM or certified survey map lots and are not part of the subdivision request. As part of the zoning administrator's review, it was determined that the water feature on this body of water is a man-made pond. It is not bound by the state of Wisconsin Navigable Water Shoreline District as a man-made pond. We would still require that a 40-foot setback would be required as opposed to the 75-foot setback. This was also confirmed by the shoreline zoning team as part of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. This is subject to the Sawyer County Subdivision Ordinance and County Code of Ordinances Appendix C. As again, for the preliminary plat review, I have the requirements listed here within my staff report. I have deemed as the zoning administrator that the preliminary plat has been conditionally approved by myself as it is deemed necessary to comply with the provisions, and it has gone through the public notification aspects similar to those with applicable fees as to a conditional use permit. The subdivider shall comply with section 6 for the roads before the final plat is to be approved by the zoning committee. This should be addressed as part of the final plat submission process. But in conversations with the applicant and with the town is wanting these to remain as private roads, and that is how they are shown on the preliminary plat as well. Where zoning committee finds that additional information is relative to a problem or concern proposed by a proposed subdivision, the zoning committee shall have the authority to request such information from the subdivider. Such additional information may include, but not limited to, soil borings conducted by a certified soil tester, which I believe there has been several soil tests done on the property, and they have conducted conventional sewer systems or produced conventional sewer systems, potentially to a stormwater management plan under the provisions of NR 216, the achieving of erosion control performance standards, and even to the extent regional flood elevations. This property is not bound by any floodplains. Regional flood elevations would not have any concern here. And then again, this is another requirement from DNR, but the subdivider prior to 1 acre of earth disturbance will need to submit for and be granted a permit for stormwater management from the DNR. So whether or not, this committee wants to make that, as a conditional approval aspect on the prelim or a conditional approval aspect on the final, again, there's another entity or jurisdiction that's still going to require that once they start breaking ground and before they break ground to over an acre, they need to have a stormwater management plan in place by a DNR. Again, Sawyer County Zoning Administrator and myself have deemed the application complete, and I would answer any questions that this committee have, or we can open up to the public hearing and hear from the subdivider or I believe I've seen the surveyor online as well.
Okay,
And those that aren't familiar with where this property is, it's off of Phipps Road, off of Highway 63. The KOA campground is just here to the south, that chunk to the north there. Again, there is that man-made pond that is in here. We look back at some of the history. It's somewhere in the 40s and 50s that this pond was excavated out, and I believe the highway actually potentially had gone through here at one point. So you look at aerial imagery back from historical aerial imagery. Back in the 30s, this was a farm field. There was no pond there. There was no swamp there. It was a man-made dugout pond. So again, it's not bound by the state of Wisconsin public trust doctrine for a navigable water of the state. And here we have the preliminary plat proposal, 15 lots.
and it wouldn't even be considered a wetland?
So this has been our policy, and we probably should get something on the books at one point, but whenever we have man-made ponds, we still treat a 40-foot setback on it, because we would still see that there is, okay, if we can't bound it to a 75-footer because it doesn't fall under the shoreline district as defined by the state of Wisconsin, we still look like that, okay, it has wetland features to it. I mean, they're standing water, right? So we still treat a 40-foot setback for building purposes on those.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Jay on this?
Yeah, there's really nothing in writing. I guess, I mean, if someone wanted to push and said, I want to build 1 foot away from the pond, I'd have to get some additional information to probably end up fighting that. We could probably still take soil borings. We could probably still look at near water vegetation and probably still ping it as a wetland. We're going to have wetland vegetation. We're going to have hydrology because there's standing water. Whether or not we have soils under the water that are conducive to wetland soils. Soils and the formation of soils takes quite a bit of time to see those wetland soils, over 80 years. Would you end up getting soil conditions that change? Potentially. But I believe the applicant was very agreeable to the 40-footer and actually is looking at a further distance than that. So.
Okay. All right. I need a motion to go into public hearing.
Before you go in, Rebecca has her hand
Oh,
raised.
sorry.
I don't know if she wants to add something before we go into a public
Yeah,
hearing.
that's fine. Go ahead, Rebecca. Sorry.
No worries, thank you. I have a quick question for Jay. So according to section 6 of the subdivision code, it requires that the roads be dedicated as public roads.
Unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept them, and I believe the town of Lenroot did not want to accept this as a public road.
Where is that in the code?
I've done it a few other times before. I'd have to grab the subdivision ordinance. Let me see if I can find it online, but it basically, it's found in 2 spots. In one spot, it says, well, they have to be public roads. You have to meet these requirements. And then there's a line item that says, unless the municipality chooses not to accept it, and then it goes and diverts back to private roads. I'll try to find that though here. But I'm gonna have to stop sharing screen here.
No worries, Jay. I have it pulled up. I'll look for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I need a motion to go into public hearing for the Pinecone Pond LLC preliminary county subdivision plat for a 15 lot proposal. Mr. Sorolski.
I'd like to make that motion, please.
I'll second.
Mr. Steve, we have a motion and a second on the floor to go into public hearing on the Pine Cone Pond. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We are now in public hearing as the applicant here. You step forward, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is John Volmers. My address is 10415, sorry, North McLean Road. That's Hayward, Wisconsin, 54843.
Okay, is there anything you would like to tell the committee?
Yeah, so we're looking to subdivide into 15 lots for single-family dwellings. We went through all the stuff as per Jay said. Our intentions are to never be closer than 40 feet at all, with most properties being well past that. So that's what our intentions are. The pond was created actually in 1976 when the highway went in. I confirmed that with the previous, with the owner that grew up there. So his father had it put in when they built the highway. So the highway was on the right side of the road and they moved it over.
So you're talking about building houses in there?
Correct, single family houses.
Single family? Will they be rentals or
No, owner occupied is our.
owner occupied?
Yes.
Okay. All right, anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else wants to speak in favor of this? Ms. Zilmer?
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, neither in favor or opposed, but the information that is in the notice and here on the agenda does not let you know what the zone district is or the total acreage. So there could be questions as to what size lot and if those lot sizes are appropriate for zone district. And it doesn't come into play so much with this one as it does maybe the next one. So if you could please cover that in your deliberations, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else out there want to speak in favor? Okay, does anyone out there want to speak and oppose this? Okay, if not, need a motion to come out of public hearing on the Aspen Grove.
Nope, Pine Cone Pond.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm trying to get out of here. All right, Pine Cone Pond. Sorry. We have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson
Second it.
and second by Mr. Steve to come out of public hearing on the Pine Cone Pond. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, we are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action for the preliminary plat review for Pine Cone Pond LLC. This would be for a county subdivision plat consisting of a 15 lot proposal. A few things to touch base on here. The zoning is listed as part of the application. It is zoned RR2, so the lot configurations are compliant as part of the plat procedure that was submitted as part of the preliminary plat that was submitted. And going back to Rebecca's question, so yeah, this is one of those ordinances again that probably needs some cleanup and it's a little bit convoluted, but you start looking at the aspects of private road easements where you go to 6.1.5, and yeah, I have it up here. Private roads serving county and state subdivisions are not allowed except as provided in 6.1.3. You go back up to 6.1.3 and the first sentence there, all roads in a county or state subdivision plat shall be public roads unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept the roads. So in this case, Town of Leadenhall is choosing not to accept it as a public road, therefore diverts back to a private driveway. Still needs to meet the other requirements of width and length and turnaround cul-de-sacs, but it's to be and remain as private roads. And we had this several other times. We have a conditional approval right now for the 3 separate phases of the preserve. That one again is kind of on hold for a little bit. They're getting some of those conditions together on that. But we also had that same case with our next final plat approval where, again, you reference one section to go back to another section. We've always just left it up to the towns. Towns, do you want to have this as a public road or do you want to have it as a private road? And most towns aren't in the position of taking on additional public roads at this point.
Okay, Rebecca, you okay with that?
Yes, thank you, Jay. And then also, I just wanted to mention that there is case law that is consistent with that point. So yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Good job. Okay. Discussion and action.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Pine Cone Pond,
Pond. Yep.
with the condition of a stormwater management plan.
So you need to.
I guess I have well, I'll wait till there's a second.
Okay. Do we have a second? I'll second that
Yeah, I'll
motion.
second that.
Okay, let Mr. Schuman second it.
Now, prior to a vote, just to solidify your motion, before you would sign off on a final, do you need the applicant to provide the stormwater management plan?
That would be my intent.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion.
I would agree.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve with the conditions. Any more discussion? Not? Roll call, Kathy, please.
Kay Wilson. Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
John Saralski.
Yes.
Steve Carriennen. Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing for Aspen Grove for the final county subdivision plat for a 7-lot proposal. Owner is Gord Capital LLC. This is located in the town of Hayward. This requires zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection. Again, 7-lot proposal. This property is actually zoned to agricultural 1, so the lot proposals are all larger than 5-acre minimums. With building as a residential structure within the agricultural zone district, each individual lot will still need to go back for a town approval process. Unless for some reason there is an applicant that is actively engaged in an agricultural production, which you'd find very difficult in this setting, but I guess anything's possible. I have conditionally approved the final plat. It meets all the requirements per our ordinance. And the reason why I asked on that last one, with this one here, this was not conditionally approved for a final. It was just approved as a prelim to move to final. Here again, the subdivider will need to submit for a stormwater management plan to the DNR prior to 1 acre of earth disturbance. This property is relatively flat with no identified wetlands. Again, the lots are to remain over 5 acres and zoned agricultural 1, which would require that additional town approval process during the land use permit issuance. But here again, if you do approve the final plat, you can conditionally approve a final plat contingent upon the stormwater management. Otherwise, you would ultimately, if you want to see the stormwater management plan prior to approving the final plat, you'd almost have to, postpone or table this until that information became available. So just keep that in mind moving forward. It's, cart and horse thing. I don't know how backed up DNR is with issuance of stormwater. I don't get heavily involved with it. I know the contacts for it, but I don't get heavily involved with stormwater management. But here again, we have a 7-lot proposal. Nothing has changed since the prelim, and we have the final available up here on the table, which is the same map that you see now up on your screen.
Jay, could you explain the need for town approval for the lots? I don't understand that part.
Yeah, so per the zoning ordinance, and if we go back, this is probably more than a dozen years ago, If you wanted to build within if you wanted to build a residential structure within either the Forestry 1 zone district, Agricultural 1 zone district, or Agricultural 2 zone district, and you weren't engaged in a silviculture operation or a farming operation, it actually required a conditional use permit. So we were seeing multiple requests come through the zoning committee for someone wanting to build on a Forestry 1 property. They had 40 acres out in the woods. I want to build a cabin out there. And we were seeing, 5 to 6 per month of people wanting to build in those zone districts. At that time, we made a more simplistic and more streamlined process because at that time zoning committee says, well, we don't want to hear all these. We're just approving them all anyways. Why don't we have it as a town approval process, and the towns can then decide if they want to allow building in a Forestry 1 or an Agricultural 1 zone district. So over those last 12 years, we've seen well over 1,000 applications for building in a Forestry 1 or an Ag 1 across all towns. Not one town has ever denied any of those applications. Ultimately, they kind of want those properties on their tax rolls. There have been some conditions that towns have put on that they can't be further subdivided. I think that's really the only conditions that I've seen, where they have a 10-acre lot and they didn't want to further have them subdivided and chunk it out. But it's still in the ordinance that if you're going to build in an agricultural zone district or a forestry zone district, that it still is required town approval. So we get a land use permit submitted to our office. We then forward that land use permit onto the town board. They would hear that case at their town board level, send us their information back if they approved or denied, and then we would issue the permit. So this, again, remaining in an agricultural zone district, it's actually kind of nice because it's going to keep larger lot sizes, right? It's going to keep 5-acre minimums to these things. But anytime someone wants to build on either of these 7 lots, they'll have to go back to the town and seek that additional town approval.
Okay. Usually we wait for town approval, don't we? But we can't, we could.
No, so
approve- We could approve this.
Yeah,
But,
And two different things there, Ron. So this is town approval when they go to build. The town has approved.
oh, okay, okay.
The
I
plat.
Misunderstood. All right, got it. Okay, thank you.
All
All
right, I
right,
should have read that for the last one
No,
here
you're
as well.
fine.
So as
Now
part of
you
the town board's motion for the final plat approval, approved Benjamin Kurzweil, Andrea Whitworth, Carol Williamson, Gary Inhofe, Brenda Detloff, all unanimously approved with no conditions, signed Bryn Hand.
okay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing for Aspen Grove.
Make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Sorolski. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second by Mr. Steve. Okay, we have a motion, a second to go into public hearing on Aspen Grove. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come up, talk to the committee, sir? State your name and address, please.
Good morning. I'm Lee Gord, 906 West Shore Drive, Madison, Wisconsin. I don't really have any additional comments to what you've seen. I've owned this land for probably over 20 years. When I bought it, there were 6 rental properties on it. Those are all gone now. 4 trailer houses and a duplex. So it's totally vacant now. So it's really all I have to say.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Anybody have any questions for him? All right, does anyone out there like to speak in favor of this approval of this plat review? Does anyone out there want to speak for disapproval of the plat review? Okay, if not, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on Aspen Grove.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Wilson. Do I have a second? We have a second by Mr. Sorolski to come out of public hearing on Aspen Grove. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
Discussion action for Aspen Grove, a final county subdivision plat for 7-lot proposal. This requires zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection.
Committee?
Move to accept.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. C. We have a second.
Second, Chairman.
Okay, we have motion and a second by Mr. Schuman. Any more discussion? If not, do we have a roll call? Kathy, please.
Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
John Saralski,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Steve Carrianen,
Yes.
Kay Wilson.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Moving on to new business, multi-dwelling development is still on there, but ultimately have not had any time to work on it. Those that are not familiar with the current status of the zoning and conservation department, Michelle Harris had left sometime in mid-May.
Yep.
She was our administrative assistant who had done a lot of the scanning, the mailing, the general inquiry, phone conversations, the data entry. So we've been without her for the last 3.5, 4 weeks. And then as of last week, Friday, Pat Brown, the assistant zoning administrator, basically my right-hand man, had taken a new position as well in Barron County. So our department has been a 3-person zoning department, and we are the busiest that I have seen in my 15 years of working at Sawyer County. When I first started at Sawyer County, we had 8 people within the zoning department. We now have 5, and as of temporarily, we have 3. And we are busier now than we've been in the last 20-some plus years. So I have not had time to work on any of the ordinance amendment processes. I'm just at this point trying to keep my head above water with permit issuance.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jay. We'll just keep adding it. to the
Right.
agenda.
So yeah, and that is my intent, to keep adding it to the agenda and eventually to, pick this back up with additional survey questions to be sent out to the towns. Ironically enough, and I've had conversations with Rebecca, we do have a request for a multi-dwelling development proposal for next month. And it'll be interesting as to how we even potentially hear this case. Multi-dwelling development is something that isn't going away. People are going to want to do it. Now, I know this, original proposal that we had for the ordinance amendment had a few other facets that we were trying to all clean up in one shot. And maybe it's better to piecemeal this out through, 3 or 4 separate approval processes. But you look, every other county really has some type of multi-dwelling development, provisions. When I talk about multi-dwelling development, it's having, as a resort type of aspect, or a new condominium type of aspect, or someone wanting to build, multiple townhomes on one lot. Right now, the conflict that we're seeing within our own zoning ordinance is there's avenues to do multi-dwelling development through conditional use permits. So this committee would hear them, the towns would hear them. But then we have specific definitions that say you're only allowed 1 dwelling unit per lot. Well, if you have an avenue to do it over here, but yet you have a definition that says you're only allowed 1 per lot over here, the ordinance sits there and goes and butts heads. And that's where, again, now we have a request coming through, and it's, do we have any type of legal wiggle room to hear those types of cases without an official ordinance amendment being enacted? So it'll be interesting, and we'll try to get through it the best we can for next month's agenda item on that. So, and it's not just the only one. I probably get, I had one in my office the other day. Someone else is looking at doing a multi-dwelling development, kind of looking at doing a new condominium complex and trying to have 11 lots or 11 units as part of a condominium, but it's all on one lot. So it'll be interesting.
Okay. Steve, do you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Number B. Any other business that may come before the committee? Discussion only? Ben?
Just to clarify, United States private road, public road, first time, Ford Road, that road, that is a private road, that's subdivision, just so you guys are aware of that, I'm not sure I put that down.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's what it's showing on the plat. So
All right. There's no other business. I want to thank everybody and the audience. Go ahead, excuse me, Mr. Robinson, you want to come up? Sure, sorry.
My name is Don Robinson. I live at 15024 W Highway B in Hayward, Wisconsin. I have two things, kind of opinions I would like to express.
Here's Don Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just two opinions that I would like to express. One of them, I've been concerned for some time about the fact that Southern Sawyer County seems to be dying. I don't know what the zoning committee can do to help that a little bit. We lived for 40 years, 20 years at Winter and 20 years at Ojibwa before we came to Hayward. And we came to Hayward because our daughters, we have 4 daughters, they all married either Hayward people or somebody that was up this way. So there's been opportunities, I think, to do things in that Southern Sawyer County area. Then I don't know whether zoning has been the restrictive or if it's just the people themselves that kind of shot themselves in the foot. I don't know. But I would like to see something happen before. It was a wonderful place to live at one time. You know, it was growing. It seemed to be growing at least when I was there. And there was a bowling alley and a drugstore and there was all kind of run, you know.
I know, yeah.
And those things are all disappearing. They've left. And I'm saying why? It's still a wonderful, beautiful place. And so that's one of the things I wanted to bring to the board's attention, to see if there maybe isn't some way that there can be some emphasis on trying to help. You know, the people in Hayward, they're fighting growth to an extent. Because they're all worried about, you know, we're going to be overdeveloped and we're going to be this and that. Everybody moves here because they like it the way it is. They don't want to change. And I worked as a forester for Northern States Power Company. I had a lot to do with zoning on chippewa floyd's and those types of things. And my experience is that a lot of people, once they get their little lot on the lake, they don't want anybody else on it. So a very selfish aspect of it. Not that I'm saying that we should continue overdevelop or whatever, but it's just the way people are, you know, and I don't really want to criticize that. It's just, we're kind of all that way. And we like things the way they are. So I would like to see some, I don't know if we have a subcommittee or whatever or something to try to explore kind of what could be done for Southern Sawyer County. Because I think some of the development that's happening up here in the Hayward area could happen in Southern Sawyer County. One of the other things I want to say, this has been a long time since I've addressed this particular committee. I'm in the campground business. I would like to see kind of a lobby group or some kind of a group that would give advice to this particular body, that would be able to tell what our concerns are and what the problems are, and that we have these different rules being made and whatever, and they're being made by people that don't understand our industry. And I would just like to have some kind of way to have a little chance to say something. So that's really all I'm trying to say, really. I'm not complaining about the zoning the way it is now, or I understand that there's some things that I would like to change or see changed, but I'd like to have a kind of a willing ear, somebody that would like to work. I don't know if I should form a campground lobby type of thing or, but anyway, that's all I really had to say. So.
All right. Thanks, Don. Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. With that being said, and we got no more, we are adjourned. Thank you.